Hello, everyone from Tulum, Mexico, as I am helping the Adosia project close out funds 2 through 7. We have this project closeout actually occurred a couple months ago, but there has been a request that we complete a closeout video. So I have the project manager, Kyle Solomon, with me, and he is not in Tulum, Mexico. Kyle's probably in Puerto Rico.
No, I am in Puerto Rico.
Kyle's in Puerto Rico.
We're out there.
So, but we're coming from the Caribbean. And Kyle and I are going to run through this very quickly. We're just going to kind of do a quick rundown of each of these projects so that everybody understands what they meant. So let's get started. Fund 2, Kyle, let's start with that. This was 200006 IoT Utility DApp Sign TX Arduino. So tell me a little bit about this proposal. How did that go in a nutshell?
So the concept for this proposal was to enable the ability for home Arduino hobbyists to create a method for them to easily sign a transaction on their home device. And so, we built a library out for that, and that library is available. So we have got an open GitHub repo where you can use that. But the challenge to bringing that solution to market ultimately lied in the ability for a need for secured hardware. You've got to store the key either on flash, or if you store it encrypted on flash, you have to have a secure mechanism to decrypt it. And so ultimately, for bringing it to production, we never saw any production activities take a hold of that application.
Okay. So, but you notice a security flaw, and at that point, that's kind of where that went. Okay. So let's move on now to Fund 3. This is
well, just to clear on Fund 2, it totally works for home applications for hobbyists and enthusiasts. But if you're actually taking the device online and providing remote access, then it becomes a significant potential security issue.
Right. But you actually did. You actually did it. This is the one. Is this the one that you actually watered a plant with space coins?
No. That's the trigger. That's the trigger IoT.
That's the next one that we're getting to. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but so in this one, that's the bottom line with this one is that it works, but it works in a fashion that wouldn't go into some big production commercial use because of the need for more secure hardware.
That's correct. Yeah, but it's the application absolutely serves its purpose for introducing embedded hardware enthusiasts to Cardano.
Okay, very cool. All right, so now let's move on to Fund 3. This is really a kind of a cool one. So Fund 3, it is 300003 ADA TX, so an ADA transmission to trigger IoT plus IO hardware spins, input output hardware spins, not IOG, but
was this the fund where we delivered Hydron as an alternative pivot due to the fact that certain things we proposed were being developed in parallel by other community members? I think it was.
It is, yes.
Yes.
So okay. We have a little bit on screen here. So you did deliver deliver a backend to let devices.
So what we pivoted on this particular fund was we had proposed an adapted open source API to handle kind of pricing, and Mercury was a WordPress plugin that was being developed in parallel by Adam Dean at the time. And so given kind of the landscape of the ecosystem, it was evolving. Hydron, which is an open source token delivery initiative, made more sense to implement, and it actually served as the basis for why we created Drip Drops.
Right. And so that is this is the Fund 3 proposal. So it was a pivot, but that pivot was to build and deliver an open source tool that's called Hydron, right?
Well, yeah. The pivot specifically was that first bullet where we were going to create an open source API for pricing tracking.
Okay.
But the triggering hardware, IoT hardware with ADA transactions, that absolutely occurred. Yeah, we watered a plant with some space coins, a space coins transaction, and so that was interesting. And also this Hydron implementation came out to be the very first token withdrawal platform deployed on Cardano to provide incentive for delegates for staking to various stake pools. And so that was the first implementation of that.
Right on. All right. So yeah, so I had to go here and find it. Here was the adaptive open source backend. That was right there. And that was the one that was because of the Mercury WordPress plugin, you decided not to move on that part, and you did the other work for Hydra.
That's correct.
And then this is the screen that actually was the one where you could pay with ADA, Adosia, or Space Coins and water plants, and you did that in that part.
Right. So the platform itself and its existence is you can create arbitrary remote triggers, so a device can be triggered by certain actions. And in this particular step, what you can do is you can say, oh, I want to attach this Cardano address to it, and then attach, a triggering amount and currency. And for the purpose of this initial MVP, we supported Cardano and then the native assets, Adosia tokens, as well as space coins. So we set up a trigger that basically said, if I receive X amount of space coins at this address, go ahead and trigger this IO on this IoT device. And so it was pretty cool experiment. And first time, I think maybe the outside world was triggered by Cardano. So we definitely delivered on that one. Absolutely.
And then the piece, here's the piece where there was the pivot, and this was the Hydron, and that was it really became the basis of what Drip Drops was.
Well, and that's part of why we didn't continue development on Hydron. We realized, okay, you've got an external component that's really requiring a little bit extra heavy lifting from project sources, and it just made sense for us to bridge the expertise we already knew. And if you look at when we deployed Hydron, this was Q3, Q4, and we launched Drip Drops a few months later. So it was a seamless evolution of you see the story being kind of how it unfolds.
Right on. Then you also did have this open hardware IO board design with the bill of materials, Gerbers, and everything. This is actually available also on a GitHub, right?
Absolutely.
With the license, that's out there. It's right here. Here's the GitHub link right here.
Schematics and Gerbers are available. You guys can go and take those files and manufacture those very cheaply. Any third-party manufacturer.
Right on. All of these, let's see, we had modifyadosia.com code base. You did that. You minted the ADO token. You implemented the on-platform ADO token incentive models.
No, that is something that didn't happen. The incentive models for IoT data sharing. So, we didn't take any treasury funds for that, but that was the original play that we were looking at for Adosia. And if you look in the later funds, we actually had to pivot the project, or we decided to pivot the project. So that initial revenue component was basically trying to incentivize IoT device creators for creating profile variations. But what we learned through those processes, it would be a lot much heavier listing to go that route. And with the given kind of market incentive, it made a lot more sense to pursue 3D printing markets as opposed to the embedded development controller guys.
Okay, so this is the beginning of the pivot for Adosia, is where these were the things that you were figuring out that weren't going to work for what
I think the pivot really started to happen towards the Fund 8 proposal, but this was a component of that led to that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so, Hydron was successfully implemented to Adosia to enable stake-based incentives for community pools. And you did that. I actually remember when I first met you, this was way back, you showed me that I could claim Adosia tokens from your website. So I actually know I claimed some.
You know what? Go back to implement on-platform ADO token incentive models for data sharing. Yeah, I did have things like that where the devices can check in. And they're totally on platform. Yes, those are there, but it's not a robust model for sure.
Right, but I literally remember that was one of the first kind of things that I did whenever I was first coming into the space was played with that, because you showed me that and I played with that.
That's neat.
So that was fun. That was for Fund 3. So just a quick rundown there. That was Fund 3. So a little bit more complex work happening there. Now let's move forward to Fund 6.
Right.
Fund 6 was 600107, peer-to-peer IoT marketplaces. The original budget was for a front-end development to build out the marketplace for a peer-to-peer IoT marketplace, and then back-end development with a RESTful API, hardware improvements with the temp, and then adding a new temp sensor. And you were going to build a peer-to-peer marketplace by the end of 21, and a fully functional project going into the next year. And I do know that this is where the pivot really started to happen for Adosia, right? Because between the time that you applied for these funds in Fund 6 and the time that you won and the funds were actually delivered, that's the time frame where you guys learned of the security issue. It's as I recall. Does that sound right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. So it became aware to us that we couldn't move forward without significant funding under kind of pursuing the Arduino model. So we had a security issue with how the devices would log into the platform. And what we wanted to do is the devices were kind of logging in with a universal key, and we actually wanted to move the devices to where they use their actual Cardano signatures, right? Use their private keys to sign data to log in, essentially. And after exploring that model, it came to the point we were going to actually need to spin our own hardware and actually spin our own silicon, and it was far too untenable to bring that to market. And given the hype of and the whole bolstering of the NFT marketplace and what the NFT market of what they were doing for Cardano, it made a whole lot of sense to try and bridge the hobbyist surge that we've been seeing in the 3D printer space. 3D printers are maturing to the point where everyday users can use them more and more. They're much easier to use, and the adoption we were seeing was increasing much further. And so, it made sense to really, and looking at the idea is how can we create economic opportunity? That's really the whole fundamental goal of Adosia. And, enabling people to create IoT profiles and sell those IoT profiles, it's a really cool idea. And I still think it holds ground, but you've got to have some really good hardware to make that all happen in reality at a larger scale. Whereas the 3D printer market made a whole lot of sense. Now, don't get me wrong. If we can build our own 3D printers down the road, we can totally open up more proprietary type stuff and limit prints and just go after Amazon type stuff. But initially, near term for the market, it made more sense to align with the NFT marketplace with what was happening. But the disadvantage we ended up having is we tried to do it coming on the tip of a bull market into a bear market, not the other way around. That's just life and circumstance. Right. But yeah, this is where we actually had to pivot, made some hard calls, and ultimately, we made quite a few hard calls in this time frame, right? So we had the Fund 6 time frame where we pivoted into the IoT, and that's where we kind of rolled out into Space Printer. And I think we had to pivot again in Fund 8, where it was more like a sidestep pivot where we went away from a fully decentralized back end. Well, it still is fully decentralized back end. And let me rephrase that: a fully decentralized front end to our fully decentralized back end. Partially due to user experience. We ran into some roadblocks where the UX just would not be tenable in a fully decentralized ecosystem. But we pivoted into this Uber marketplace idea where users could come and buy anything that anybody in the world wanted to design, as long as someone else out there in the world opted to fulfill the order. And so that was the new model of Adosia, and that's what we've been working towards. So let's drill into the Fund 6 and kind of get into specifics where we need to.
Right, and that's what I'm showing here now. This is where the funds in Fund 6 started going to the smart contract development, and these are GitHub. These are just pictures from the GitHub production. You also can go to the GitHub for the smart contracts. The Space Printer smart contracts are fully open source and available, so you can see that all this work happened on the smart contracts in that time frame.
And it's very important to note that the smart contract work was not wasted. We did zero development work on smart contracts for the IoT profile stuff. So we didn't waste any resources there. We made the decision to pivot and applied the resources appropriately to the pivot.
Right. And then here's where the front end, this was the attempted work on getting the front end done fully decentralized. This was what the original space printer, and this is the contributions to that. And I believe there was another one called Cardano Box, I believe, at the same time. I think there were some contributions to at that same time frame.
Okay.
So, and that was the. Yeah.
I believe Fun Date is where we pivoted from the existing model. Mm-hmm. This is where we were working on the actual decentralized front end.
Yes,
and this
decentralized front end.
Yeah, the Fun 7 makes sense to come back into fruition after we figure out the user conundrum. But we've got a lot of philosophical, I don't know, I'd say disagreements. Healthy disagreements, right? About how adoption is going to move forward. And so this is all just kind of a piece of that.
This is where we started really saying things like decentralization is a journey, right? Where we started looking, as across teams, because this was across multiple teams that this work was going on at that time. We had a couple guys working at Adosia exclusively. We had guys at Drip working exclusively. There wasn't any overlap yet at all, actually. I remember you had asked me some questions, and we had a conversation about it. And I'm like, it is decentralization is a journey. We got to get there. And because I was trying to be a printer operator, right? I was just kind of coming out of Adosia at that point as just a printer operator. I had a 3D printer, and I'm fairly technically savvy, so I was trying to make it work. And I was one of the people having problems where I could see it's like, this isn't quite hitting. We're not quite getting where we need to be. And so we had those conversations about, maybe we have a different front end that, it's not losing this one, which we never did. This one's still there, and it still functions with the smart contract. It's kind of fallen behind because we haven't kept up with the updates on it.
Well, it was a UX nightmare. I mean, if we're trying to ask the world to adopt crypto in a reasonable fashion, it wouldn't have flown. Yeah. If we were trying to provide a solution for a war-torn geo, it would have rocked all day. And so it's just a hard call from a management perspective. It was a nightmare to get to be able to be usable. And so, we've got to have critical mass before we can go. But what we decided to do was build the Adosia backend so anybody could come and do the things that we could not do today. Because as a protocol creator, we have to operate with a certain amount of caution, if you will, right, with how we proceed, especially building the first front end. But we've lifted the veil so anybody who comes behind us can build whatever front end they want on behind it.
That's right, because the space printer contract is fully open source, fully available on GitHub. Anybody can go check it out, and it pretty much brings. I think that brings Fund 6 to a nice close. It was another learning opportunity, another lesson. And then we've got one more that we have here now. What's interesting about this Fund 7 proposals, this isn't actually an Adosia proposal, right? Like, it's in our list here. We were asked about it because it was related to Adosia, and so we included what we knew about it in this. But let's kind of just give a little history of what this is too, since we're closing everything else out. Let's spend a couple of minutes on this and wrap this guy up. So Fund 7 was 700006, 3D design and print NFT. And again, a note that it is not an official Adosia proposal. But Kyle, go ahead and tell us a little bit about the story of this one.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, one of the reasons we are here is to attract some of the best talent in the world to come participate and stay here. And so as part of that, two members of the Adosia team are SpaceX engineers. They are full-time employees of SpaceX. And part of the engaging community, they opted to bring their design skills from designing real rockets into designing NFT type rockets with our ecosystem, and brought SpaceX caliber design level expertise to our ecosystem. And so they essentially asked for money to compensate their time for designing, 3D NFT rockets for the Adosia program. And they did just that. They delivered on that. We have a live rocket sale. Those are the actual schematics. It's a 7-component rocket, 10 in total. You've got a nose cone, you've got door, window, you got a body, you've got fins, you've got an engine component and a flame, and there's 4 fin components. Total of 10 components, and they did the joints and designed them real well to mitigate, errors and braking and that kind of stuff. So there's a whole lot of work that went into the design of these rockets, and there's thousands of combinations that we sell, and you can actually buy one today if you want. Head on over to adosia.market. There's a big old fat link there that you can click to buy a rocket. Please do. Please support the team. But they did a great job. They Jean-Paul and Gia came in, and they brought their expertise to the team, and they designed some pretty cool stuff. And they're used to designing in metal, so there were some learning curves that they had to kind of overcome. But all in all, the level of professionalism and expertise they brought to the Adosia initiative was just unparalleled. And honestly, that's the type of caliber we want to build or design a 3D printer for us moving forward. But we've got to find a way to keep these guys engaged early on when there's not a whole lot of opportunity. So they did a great job. They delivered. They probably didn't put in the effort for them to close out their video, but that in no way, shape, or form should hang us up in any way whatsoever.
Right, it shouldn't. If Catalyst is okay with it, they can accept this as a closeout video for Gia and John Paul. Well, that would be awesome.
Well, they should. They should, because they certainly shouldn't affect our endeavors.
Absolutely.
They did very well. They didn't ask us to approve whether or not they submitted that, so they shouldn't ask us to deal with them closing out their stuff either.
Absolutely. Well, and of course, I'm not home, but if I were home, I could point behind me, because I've actually got 2 of these rockets on the shelf behind me that are on camera, like every time I'm on camera at home. So I can't do it today because of where I'm at.
They've been printed at many shows. There's more than enough evidence that these rockets exist in volume.
Oh yeah, they're all over the place. So yeah, they were at NFT. They were at CNFT Con, and then they were also at NFT XLV. Because we had a booth for Adosia there both years, and in both years the rockets were there. We were even printing parts at CNFT Con in 22. So very cool. So ultimately, this is what happened for funds 2 through 7, and lots of good lessons learned, lots of good work that was put forward for the funds that were received. And we asked the Catalyst community to accept this kind of long-running 23-minute video. Sorry guys, but it does go over multiple proposals for funds 2 through 7 that helps the Adosia team close out their work, because as we all know, Fund 11 is here, and in Fund 11 they've asked that all proposals that are before Fund 8, right? I believe it's Fund 8. So it's like 7.
No, before Fund 7.
Before Fund 7. So everything before Fund 7 be closed out. So we hope that you guys accept this video as the closeout for these older projects. And thank you, and we'll see you next time.
And this video does accompany a full report that was submitted back in April.
Absolutely, yes. The full report was already submitted, already accepted. Some of these projects already show closed out, but I believe 1 or 2 of them do not. And so we're just going through them all with a closeout video for completeness sake. Thank you.